Good afternoon and welcome to the NACE Inclusion, Equity, and Affinity session. It is my pleasure to introduce Chris Carlson, NACE President, Northrop Grumman.
I was muted. Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited that you're here today to join us. Today's topic is near and dear to my heart. Over the past year, one of the key initiatives that we undertook was developing 13 different affinity groups with the hopes that we can start to celebrate as well as share as well as learn more about the diversity of perspectives that exist across our membership and across our profession. We set up different affinity groups based on individual memberships, so individuals who might want to engage with others as well as to share their own perspectives and their own stories. We have groups that are diversity of organizations and institutions. So we have some representing unique components of our membership that often have different experiences, different barriers, different challenges, and it provides people an opportunity to really come together and work through solutions while at the same time helping to educate the entire membership around what more can we do to help expand diversity and inclusion and equity. The third group is really more around topical areas, things that are critical to us to really start to, again, expand our awareness and understanding of the world around us. Going into next year, Jen's looking to expand the number to 17, and just really excited that we have an opportunity to come together, have some critical conversations, produce some really relevant information for us all, as well as to really celebrate the diverse voices that are within our profession. As many of you know, this is even more critical in today's society, given the need to really have a concerted effort to focus on eradicating systematic racism. So we're hopeful that through some of these affinity groups, as well as through deliberate focus by the board, we're going to continue to strive to not only doing better, but we're going to make sure that we will do better as an association and as a profession. So today's session is really highlighting some of the great achievements over this last year with some of our affinity groups. And I'm going to turn it over to the co-chairs of our Inclusion, Equity, and Affinity Committee that worked this year, Cynthia, Meredith, and Jeffrey. So over to the three of you.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. We want to say really thank you to the NACE organization and to you personally in terms of your leadership that you've shown to our committee, the Affinity Impact teams over this last year. And we'll have an opportunity to celebrate some of that today, but we do want to say thank you to NACE and your leadership. Want to introduce myself first. I'm Cynthia Murphy-Ortega with Chevron Corporation, and I'm a manager of University Partnerships and Association Relations. And I'm one of the three co-chairs for this year. I'm going to have Meredith and Jeffrey introduce themselves. And as I pass the baton, I just want to say really thank you to everyone who participated on the committee, who participated in the Affinity Impact teams, who are here with us today, will join efforts in the future, really for your hard work, the output that we were able to see, and really your honesty and your passion and enthusiasm. That's really what has come out during this last year in helping to co-lead this committee. So thank you. Meredith?
Thanks, Cynthia. Hi, everyone. I'm Meredith Saddle. My role is VP of Talent Experience at Comcast NBC Universal. And I just want to echo Cynthia's remarks. It has been a true pleasure and honor to partner with this committee this year with my fantastic co-chairs, Jeffrey and Cynthia, and with all of the NACE members who've been so engaged in this very important topic. I'll just say that we're so excited that Cynthia, Jeffrey, and I will have the opportunity to co-chair this committee again next year. And we invite one and all to join us in these efforts. This is an important time, and this is incredibly important work. And we believe that together we can really make powerful change. So thank you for all you've done, and we look forward to hopefully partnering with all of you again in the future.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jeffrey Alston, Director of University Career Services, East Tennessee State University, and one of the three co-chairs for the committee. Very happy to have been a part of this group. And as with all of my NACE experiences that I've had, it's a great opportunity to get to work with individuals that you don't get to on an everyday basis, including my co-chairs as well as the Affinity Impact Team leads. Just want to thank everyone for everything that they contributed for this year. It's amazing to look back to see where we are today and where we started from roughly about this time last year. And so much work has been done, and we're excited to share some of that work with you all today. And yeah, just looking forward to what's going to come forward next in this next year for NACE.
Great, thank you. So in this, in terms of a general overview for today's session, we're going to take a few minutes and talk about the work of the committee and the Affinity Impact teams over the last year, which has really been tremendous. And then we're going to take an opportunity to talk to a couple of the Affinity Impact co-team leads to share some of their experiences as sort of a representation of all of the 13 Affinity Impact teams. Then we will hear from Jen, who is is the NACE elect president, and sort of her vision for the future as a follow-on to what Chris talked about, his efforts over the last year. And then we will have some time for Q&A. So that's just the general flow of today's session. You now see us here. On the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about the structure of the committee. And this is purposely a little busy because it has so much information and really represents all of the great work that the committee as well as the Affinity Impact teams have been dedicating themselves over the last year. I do want to say thank you to our board advisors, Tim and Seldrick, as well as Matthew, our NACE staff advisor, that has just been tremendous in helping us stay on track, pulling information together. So thank you for your support. So let me step through this slide as an example of how the committee and the Affinity Impact teams have been working together over this last year, as well as the specifics of outcomes of what we have put together. So in the middle here in the colored boxes, you'll see 4 boxes. These are really the charges of the committee, which I will go over here in a minute, and sort of the outcomes of some of that effort. On the left-hand side there, you see the Affinity Impact teams. There are currently 13 of them, and each of them have 2 co-leads and have been really putting together efforts this whole year in terms of drawing in more members, servicing the members, and so we'll talk a little bit about some of their successes. On the right-hand side is really the high-level outcomes. We were looking at content. What can we develop and share with the membership that would be beneficial? We also looked at online content, right? And that, of course, has become even more important in the current environment that we are in. Looking for opportunities to network, bring our members together, as well as training. Are there any particular topics that we could provide training on that would be beneficial? And then really most importantly is really collaboration, bringing folks together from different backgrounds, different ideas, and working on common outcomes together. So let's step down to the bottom here. So the charges that we had fall into 4 categories, and there's actually 5 particular action items that we were working on. So first, in the educational program there, an at-large committee dedicated to inclusion-focused programs fostering diverse perspectives and content development. So Meredith led this effort and really kicked off on trying to have a survey of really what is the important content that the members are most interested in. And one of those key themes that bubbled up was being an ally, allyship. And so her committee has been working on a piece that would sort of articulate that for the organization, and that will be shared and is being brushed up now for presentation to the membership. So thank you to Meredith for that. The next charge there in orange was membership engagement, where we're really trying to bring our committee, bring our NACE community together for engagement and networking. And I happen to lead this charge, and one of the big areas that we worked on was the development of the program at the NACE conference, which now you're seeing a version of it now in terms of online, really trying to talk about the successes of the committee, the successes of the affinity impact teams, and bringing folks together to really talk about the future of the committee. And so we welcome any input during this conversation. Feel free to put it in the chat box as we sort of form the plans for next year. In the green box, we also worked on the diversity and inclusion statement. Jeffrey led this effort. There were actually two charges. One, to really work on the overall statement and make sure that it was a current, fresh, accurately represented NACE and our membership. And the second one was really to include equity into the statement. So it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so they put together a definition on all of these, and it is currently being socialized and will be presented at the July 20th, 2020 board meeting next month. The final one was an effort to really collaborate and work closely with other NACE committees and task force. I happen to lead this charge, and really I'd say one of our successes was the ability to provide feedback through the inclusion, equity, and affinity lens, equality lens for the career readiness competencies. So there was a great effort that has been put forth on updating the competencies led by Tim Harding and his committee, but we were able to look at it through a diversity lens and the language and make sure that there were no biases within that. So that was a great success as well. So that gives you an idea of how the committee worked and how it was set up. Fair amount of time up front. I just want to acknowledge really trying to figure out what is the working model for the affinity impact teams, and then turning it over to the co-team leaders last summer and seeing it flourish has just been outstanding. So speaking of flourishing, we'll go to the next slide, which is really the one example of something that really was well done by the affinity impact teams, is really looking at what are the affinity groups and who, how do we properly name them? How do we engage more members and really have affinity impact teams that represent the membership? So it's grown from the original 13 that have been in place for the last year, and now it's grown to the 17 that you see here on the screen. So thank you to the affinity impact teams and as well as NACE leadership in really trying to expand the groups and be more inclusive. On the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about sort of the work of the affinity impact teams. Now, by no stretch of the imagination does the 7 bullets represent all of the work that has been done, but it really kind of gives you some of the themes that were prevalent throughout most, if not all, of the affinity impact teams. Like I said, we did help provide some of the structure up front, but really wanted the affinity impact teams to lead themselves and find out what would best serve the members. And that's exactly what they've done. So they do have some common themes here, but they also have some very individual work to serve that particular affinity. So one I had already mentioned was allyship. So Meredith's group worked on an actual content piece around allyship, but within the affinity impact teams was really building allies. How do we be an ally? How do we lean in? How do we help others? How do we help ourselves around allyship? Really a big key part was best practices. People coming to the table, what is working well within their organizations, as well as questions, what is not working well? How can I have better input from others from a wider audience? So best practices was definitely part of the affinity impact teams. Constituent support. There was, all the groups are made up of a diverse set of folks, and really trying to figure out how best to serve the constituent that wanted to be and were active in the affinity impact teams. And some of it is, providing content, but it's also, folks coming to really just learn and be part of a network. There was content development, so several of the teams were able to develop some specific content to be shared out and has been shared out within the NACE community. Building partnerships, meeting new people, working in new areas, and ultimately trying to work together as partners to create better solutions. Also, there was an effort on creating resources. So not only was sharing the information as part of these affinity impact teams, but how do we make those available in the long term? And finally, one of the key findings was that many of these affinity impact teams were quite large and quite diverse in what the interests were. And so pretty much all of them formed some kind of subgroups or subcommittees to work on particular areas of interest, as opposed to everybody working on the same thing. And so that was very helpful to the group. And while we didn't mention it here, also I would say networking, that, you know, really an opportunity to meet new people that you don't normally work with on a day-to-day basis. So that's kind of a high-level version of the themes. Again, I want to thank all of the Affinity Impact teams for all your work, and has been tremendous to see the growth and to see the, you know, the now 17 lists. So we're going to give a round of applause. I like that. Thank you, Jeffrey. Round of applause. Thank you for all of your work. So with that, I'm going to we're going to turn it over to Jeffrey to lead us in the next section, which is really an opportunity now to hear directly from some of the Affinity Impact team leads and their journey over the last year.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. I am happy to be joined this afternoon from the co-leads from the People of Color Affinity Impact team. And so at this moment in time, I'm going to allow them an opportunity, if they would, to introduce themselves. And I will ask if Ingrid would kick us off. You're muted, Ingrid. Muted still. Charles, you want to?
Can you hear me?
We can.
All right. Hi, everybody. Ingrid Giordano with Citi. I lead our university relations and campus diversity efforts, and really excited to be here today. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Charles Jennings. I serve as the Senior Associate Director of Employer Engagement and Outreach at Princeton University. And I am very excited and thrilled to be here today to talk about the wonderful work that the People of Color Affinity Impact team has done this past year.
So Ingrid and Charles, and this is to our audience as well, there are 830 individual members, NACE members, who are a part of the Affinity Impact teams. And out of that, a total of 2,192 people total, because a lot of people, you know, have joined multiple Affinity Impact teams. But those are some pretty large numbers, you know, considering the first year. When you hear those numbers, what comes to your mind in terms of just the actual people gravitating and joining and being a part of these groups?
Charles, you want me to start?
Sure.
Charles and I have become best friends through this this process. You know what, when I hear that, I just get really excited. If I think about our People of Color Affinity Group, we had started with 30 members, that grew to 50, that grew to 100, which is now, as of this morning, 189. And so I know there's 355 people that have dialed into this event. So encourage, you know, more of you to select an affinity group that you'd be interested in. But I just find that it's just shows how excited people are about the topics and being able to connect with others.
And I also want to add too, Jeffrey, that I think what it shows is that individuals who are members of NACE, this is a way for their membership to flourish and their voice to be heard in terms of, let me join a group that sits well with not only my heart, but my mission and passion in regards to what I want to contribute to the organization.
Awesome. Thank you all for those comments. Ingrid, why did you volunteer to lead the People of Color Affinity Group?
That's a great question. So if I kind of think back in terms of putting my name in the hat to volunteer, and then Chris calling me to say, you know, you're going to be taking on this affinity, you know, one, I found it really exciting, but for me, a lot of it is just to learn, to share, to connect, and to have fun. And so if I think about this from a learning perspective, I just love building things and I love learning about new topics, and I've gotten more out of it than I think I've put into this. And so it's been really great to just meet the amazing members that are part of our affinity group. I also thought, from my experience working at the company that I'm working at, really being able to share a lot of our best practices and the work that we have done to attract the best talent out there. And I really do feel it's critical for all of us to provide education, awareness, and access to students. And so it's been fun to share what we've done, and I've learned a lot in terms of what other members have done. I also thought connecting was really important. And so through the process, I not only got to know a lot of our members, I started to get reverse inquiries from other affinity impact teams that were hearing about the work that we were doing and wanting to leverage some of the content and things that we were doing in the group. And then, just finally having fun. This was never work. This was always something that was really fun to work with. And, you and the entire team has been really great to work with. So thank you.
Those are some great takeaways or some great reasons why you were interested, and definitely sound like the experience has resonated with you. It's definitely added, value to you, Ingrid. And just, I think I'm sure I can speak on behalf of Charles that, what you have brought to the group is definitely appreciated, and the organization appreciates you as well. Charles, what would you say, what impact, and either both you or Ingrid can answer this, but what impact has the activity and work your group had on its members and the NACE community?
I'm gonna let Ingrid answer that one.
Okay.
Really great question, Jeffrey. So if I think about this in terms of the impact on the work that we've done, Charles and I did a lot of listening. So when we got the charge to lead this team, we had, several meetings with the members. We did a lot of listening, and the group just started growing very quickly. So, getting from the 30 to the 50 to the 70, Charles and I had a lot of conversations of how can we make the most impact and really also make this valuable for the impact team. And so we had created a survey where we asked all of our members, what are they interested in getting out of this experience? And then we also asked, would anyone want to be a sub-team member? And we leveraged the information from that survey to determine where we wanted this group to go. And so I just have to give a shout out to our sub-team members. You know who you are, so thank you. Charles and I could not be doing what we're doing without all of you. And so we ended up creating 3 sub-teams. One sub-team was focused on best practices. Another group was focused on meetups and networking. And then another group was focused on professional development. And I am so proud to report that each of these sub-teams have had at least 2 meetings with their smaller groups. And I think given COVID and everything else that has been going on in this country, the group really has bonded, and I see really true friendships that have emerged from just having this opportunity to connect and to be able to, just leverage each other. And so, if I think about the impact, I think the impact has been great more from not only a personal and a professional level. I think that people have been able to bring back a lot of what's been discussed to their companies and to the work that they do.
Awesome. So Charles, this past year, how have you seen, and for the year ahead, would you like to see affinity groups leverage its collective voice for marginalized people to advance equity?
Jeffrey, that's a great question as well. I just want to come from the standpoint of sometimes when we look at membership in an organization, it's like invitation to dinner. You're not going to sit down at the table unless you're actually invited. And when I think of it from that standpoint, NACE has always been an organization that has really focused on inclusion and equity. But I think from this past year, with the focus of these affinity impact teams, how I think that persons of color and the members in our affinity impact team in general feel like that their voice is more prevalent now, where they can provide some type of input into how the direction that the organization will go, and also to the direction and how we can make a better impact in regards to not only our practices at our respective institutions, but our practices as an institution as a whole. I think what it will be profound for us in terms of the things that have been done, and when we look at what occurred this past week with the townhouse that were focusing on systematic racism, and how the conversations that came about in terms of how we can make a change within our profession and in the profession with our employer partners, seeing how that conversation can move forward in terms of what directive we can go for the upcoming year, trying to put some of those things that we talked about into place as action steps. So seeing that in terms of, okay, we did a lot of talk about what changes we can make last week in the town hall and the virtual roundtable, but also to trying to put those talks into place in terms of making action steps of what next can we do to make an impactful change. So I really love the fact that the energy that is surrounded in terms of, as Ingrid has mentioned, our membership has grown. And I think that shows valuably in terms of how excited members or persons of color that are within the profession have really gravitated to the work of our Affinity Impact team.
Awesome. Charles, why would you say is it important for members to get involved with the affinity groups?
It was mentioned earlier about networking. It was mentioned earlier about the sharing of resources, the sharing of best practices. But I think also too, one key thing we want to also focus in on is that sometimes when it comes to the work environment that a lot of us are in, persons of color, they may be the only person at that at their respective organization. So being in an environment where you have support of others who are going through the same type of situation that you're going through, being in an environment where you get an understanding of what each person is dealing with, being in an environment where you can get support from each other has been very valuable. I will have to highlight, Jeffrey, that one of the key things, and this started before COVID, but we started a LinkedIn group for our Affinity Impact team, where it was an opportunity for our members to not only just get to know one another from featuring each member in the team, but also to getting an opportunity to share articles related to microaggressions, articles related to dealing with not only just COVID, but recent events that have happened in our society regarding racism. So I would have to say that's the important part about our getting involved with the team. It's really a way of just extending the NACE family in a different type of aspect, where you're with, I would say, a subset of individuals who really could understand what you're facing when it comes to things that are going on at your current place of employment.
Charles and Ingrid, thank you so much, for those sentiments. With everything that is, with you all coming back, I believe you're both going to be coming back as Affinity Impact team leaders for next year. What are you most excited about?
Let me start, and before I go into answering what I'm most excited about, I have to say that the reason why I volunteered to be a part of this group, and just like Ingrid said earlier, it's not work, but I have to give credit to where credit is due, and I'm going to do a plug real quick. So just to let people know that I've been a member of NACE since 2014. Really got actively involved around 2017, but around that time, 2017, 2018, my fellow outstanding chair of the committee here started a LinkedIn group called Men of Color in Career Services. So to be a member, Jeffrey, and I'm referring to Jeffrey, to be a member of that LinkedIn group, that was outstanding for me in terms of being a part of a brotherhood of individuals who also were understood what I was going through in terms of working in career services myself. So when I got the call to be the co-team lead of people of color, this was just another extension of being a part of that wonderful group of men of color of career services. So thank you so much, Jeffrey, for that. What I'm most excited about, definitely, is that one, I have an amazing co-team lead. So working with her another year is going to be phenomenal. But I'm excited about, again, the energy, the kinship, the efforts, the work, the drive, the determination that our members exude when it comes to the things that we want to see accomplished, not only within the Affinity Impact Team, but also within NACE as a whole. And I'm excited about how this initiative, all of the Affinity Impact Teams, how this is becoming a priority for this organization. To expand it from 13 to 17 is phenomenal. And I'm just excited about the direction that NACE is going. So I can honestly say that I am very proud to be a member of not only the People of Color Affinity Impact Team, but to be a member of NACE.
Thank you very much, Charles. And so at this point, again, thank you both, Ingrid, Charles, for coming on, sharing your experiences with us. And so we will turn it over to Meredith.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeffrey, Ingrid, and Charles. You really continue to inspire us with the work that you have done as co-leads, and that all of the membership of the People of Color Affinity Impact Team has accomplished. And we look forward to continuing to partner with you in the future. So thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today. And equally as important, thank you so much for all of the passion you've shared this past year. So for the next portion of our session, I'm really excited to join in conversation today with two colleagues and close friends, Cindy Verduce and Sue Keever-Watts. Last year, I had the pleasure of working very closely with both Cindy and Sue as NACE really initiated the Individuals with Disabilities Task Force. And we're really just thrilled that it has become an Affinity Impact Team this year, and look forward to continuing to advance this work in the future. For me personally, the topic of disability inclusion is particularly close to my heart, not only from a professional perspective in terms of advancing opportunities for employment for individuals with disabilities, but also from a personal perspective, as both my son and my stepson have been diagnosed on the autism spectrum. So today I'd like to introduce both Cindy and Sue to you. They are thought leaders and really passionate change makers in the disability inclusion space, and we're honored to hear from them today. So Cindy and Sue, I'll turn it over to both of you to just do a brief introduction of yourself, and then we'll dive into our discussion. Cindy, would you like to start?
Sure. My name is Cindy Verduce, and I'm the Director of the Career Center and Regional Career Services for Indiana Tech in Fort Wayne, Indiana. As Meredith mentioned, I was the co-lead on the task force for careers with students with disabilities with Meredith, and then have served with Sue on our Affinity Impact Team.
Hi everyone, I'm Sue Keever-Watts with the Keever Group, and I was on the task force in 2018 and 19, and have the pleasure of co-leading with Cindy on this year's Affinity Group.
Thank you both. So Cindy, let's start with you. If you could share some background with us, we'd love to hear a bit about why you decided to volunteer to lead the Individuals with Disabilities Affinity Group.
Sure. You know, not unlike you, Meredith, I also have a child with multiple learning disabilities. When she was in the 2nd grade, we were told she'd never learn to read. And she's this close from graduating from college. Anatomy and physiology has given her fits, but you know, she is very happily employed. And you know, but when you see someone who's struggled and you understand the issues and some of the barriers that folks with disabilities come come in contact with, it really does make you want to do something about it. And then of course, in my profession, in my work here at Indiana Tech, at one point in time, I did supervise the Disability Services Office. So I then really got to see what was going on with our students. And then now as my office expanded and I've become more concentrated in career services, it really has become, you know, just something I'm passionate about, is helping all of our students find employment. And, you know, whether it be a student who's on the spectrum, a student who has, you know, a loss of sight issue, you know, all these students have great gifts to give. And hearing from employer partners who've had great success hiring people with disabilities has been motivating as well. And I just want to be able to share that knowledge with folks, both on the career services side and on the employer side, to help them better understand the benefits and how important it is to have a diversified work staff, and that includes people with disabilities.
Yeah, Cindy, I really like your point about, you know, focusing on the strengths. I've been hearing the term more and more, diverse abilities instead of abilities. And I really believe in that. And I know that you both do as well as your affinity group. So thanks for sharing, Cindy. So I'd love to dive a little bit deeper now and ask you, Cindy, to tell us a little bit more about the work that your Affinity Impact team has focused on this year, and what impact you think that work and all of the activity associated with it has had on the members and on the NACE community at large.
Sure. I think there's a couple of different areas that well, first of all, let me just say, we were really lucky in terms of, as a new Affinity Impact team, that we came out of a task force. So, you know, we really hit the ground running. We had things that we wanted to accomplish, you know, that we were, you know, leading into and leaning into, if you will, with the task force, such as all of the materials that we had gathered. You know, one of the things we figured out early on, I think, in the task force, and I think your comment was, you know, we don't need to boil the ocean. But there's so many resources out there. None of us needed to create a thing. We just needed to let our members know about the resources that are available to them, whether they be, you know, a career services office or an employer. So many organizations out there. And we really made an attempt to reach out to those organizations, let them know who we are, talk about how we might intersect in terms of letting our members know about the training opportunities they provide. Letting just our members know who exists. I think one of the biggest collaborations that I was most proud of, I might not be speaking to Sue, you have to tell me if this is yours, but it was really our work with the HEAD, which is basically the NACE for Disability Services offices on campuses. And we were really able to work with Stephen and the folks at HEAD. We were able to, Steve and I were supposed to do a presentation at the conference, which was going to be great, but we also were able to put together materials that we could share at a Head Start Academy for new disability services folks, to let them know about some of the issues and how to better partner with your career services office and your disability services office. Thought that was, you know, super important. We were able to provide content for a new brochure that career services offices will be able to purchase in the future that talks about disability services specifically for students with disabilities. In addition to HEAD, there were so many other groups. You know, we did something in May with Workforce Recruitment Program, where the federal government has a program to recruit individuals with disabilities. We worked with neurodiversity in the workplace. I mean, just I could name so many different organizations we were able to connect with. And one of the things we did, in addition to the 128 individuals that are a part of our Affinity Impact team, not unlike Charles, we also created a LinkedIn group. And with that, we had the ability to have the folks from HEAD, the folks from all the organizations that provide support to individuals with disabilities around hiring. They're a member of that group as well. And there's 240 individuals in that group today. So I think having the conversation, not just between career services, not just career services and employers or whatever, this is everybody is in the mix. Everybody's in the soup and in the pot and able to add content, provide insight, and answer questions, address issues. Now, one of the things I think Sue and I did find was that our members of our group at first weren't quite weren't quite sure because they're like, I don't have a disability, but I serve students with disabilities. So I applaud whoever it was, if it was Chris or Jen or you guys, Meredith, who chose to rename the group Individuals Serving Recruiting Students with Disabilities. I think that really reflects the work that we've done. You know, and in addition to that, you know, we just tried to provide content and education. Like I said, different people came to our group. Some people came just to learn. They wanted to learn about how I can better serve my students, how I can better recruit students with disabilities. So, but then we did have a core of people who really, many of which came from the task force, by the way. You know, they moved right over with us. They wanted to see the work continue. And they really did a great job in terms of putting together additional content. I recently shared some information in the community about disclosing a disability to an employer, and had someone say to me, wow, I didn't even know we had this affinity impact team. So continuing to raise the profile and raise the question and raise the issues of students with disabilities have with employment, I think is just, it's critical to what we do. I don't know, Sue, what did I leave out? I'm sure I left out something. You're muted, Sue.
I think you're on mute.
You are not capable of leaving out anything, Cindy. You were thorough.
Well, thank you, Cindy, for your thoughts. And I want to follow up on just one piece, because I know you've mentioned this on this call, and I found it really inspirational too when you had mentioned it on some committee meetings. And that is just to follow up on the piece that you mentioned around interest in getting involved, even if perhaps you don't know whether you are directly a member of that community. And so I'd like to just make sure that we spend just a minute or two more on that. So what would you say to a NACE member who says, I'm not sure if I know enough to participate in this affinity impact team, or if I am directly a member of this community? What would be your response to that?
Yeah, I think Sue and I had already talked about this, and as a recommendation moving forward, is just have, you know, people identify where they're at. And if you don't know anything, that's fine. That's why you're here. You want to learn. And we had so many people who that was the case. We also have people, though, who said, you know, I want to learn. And so I want to help pull together resources that we can share as my way to help me learn, but also to help share what we have learned. So I think there's so many different ways you can get involved in an affinity impact team. You know, at our regular committee meetings, we would have a speaker come and talk about whatever their organization was doing or whatever topic it was. You know, so it's a way to learn just by attending a committee meeting. If you want to delve deep, you could be involved in one of the subcommittees. I think there's a variety of ways people can be involved, but if it's something that you have an interest in or a passion in, join and get the emails and join the LinkedIn group and, you know, share information. I don't see every article that's out there about students employing students with disabilities, and, you know, and so if we all can share that information, it's to the betterment of everyone. And also too, I think some of the same barriers that students with disabilities face are some of the same barriers that other underrepresented populations in the employment realm also face. So it just helps give you a good look at things as well. But just get involved is great. I mean, it's really been wonderful. It really has.
Thank you, Cindy. And I would just echo that for everyone on the call today. I think if there's one message we want you to take away from this, it's that this committee and these affinity impact teams are intended to provide a sense of belonging to you. So whether you are new in terms of interacting with the community and you want to learn much, much more, and you're there to listen and ask questions and learn, or whether you consider yourself an expert on a topic and you want to lean in and contribute to the work and lead a work stream or what have you, everyone is welcome. Everyone belongs in any one of these affinity impact teams and groups, and we'd love to see all of you. So thank you, Cindy, for sharing your experience with that, and we hope it inspires others. So Sue, I'd like to turn to you now and ask a little bit about the collective power of the affinity impact team that you've been leading. So can you tell us specifically, over this past year, and in the year ahead, how would you like to see the collective voice of this Affinity Impact Team really improve opportunities for employment for individuals with disabilities?
Sure. I'm going to echo what Cindy said just to kick this off. And I need to make sure and be really clear that when I joined the task force, I didn't know anything about the topic. And I only knew slightly more when I became co-chair with Cindy. So if you look at the affinity groups, they're safe spaces. They're places where you can ask stupid questions or what you think might be stupid. And what's really important about them is they're an opportunity to elevate the voice and the interests of the group to the greater NACE community. And they give you a more intimate relationship with people who have a similar interest. It's a huge organization, and you really get to build friendships, Meredith, Cindy, with the people on your team. My hope moving forward is that this group continues to reach NACE members who really never even considered the needs of students with disabilities or the benefits of hiring this untapped pool. I think it's worth mentioning that individuals with disabilities are about 20% of the population, but they have the highest rate of underemployment or unemployment. So there's a lot of work to be done here. I think my second hope is that NACE members will become aware of the tremendous resource of information, tools, best practices, lessons learned, goodness, that are available right now on the NACE website under this topic. Get in there. So it's information to help you start a program, to improve a program, or create a best-in-class program. So awareness is the second. And I think we have a third opportunity, and that is to view our own association through the lens of individuals with disabilities and to continue to impact practices and policies within NACE to make sure that they're inclusive and equitable and accommodating.
Thanks, Sue. And we'll wrap up our discussion today with a question looking forward. So this has been the first year of the Affinity Impact Teams, and I think it's safe to say that we've all found such benefit from it. Sue, for those on the line who perhaps have not participated yet, why would you say it's important for them to get involved next year and beyond?
Well, I think the topic of inequity and injustice has been raised, and this is a tremendous opportunity. If you just want to listen and learn, if you want to advance a topic, if you want to become a subject matter expert, if you want to improve what you have, this is the way to do it. Just test the water, join, get on the phone calls, start to listen. You know, I can tell you that there's really big things that can happen for you as you join these, and there's little things. And I'll give you a good example. I can think of 3 things that I do now in my job, and that is, when I'm presenting in front of a group, I no longer ask, can you all hear me? I always make sure there's a mic in the room or that I've already tested. So I'm looking at things differently. You know, during the planning stages of an event for one of my clients, I made sure and asked, you know, let's make sure we test and find out what the accommodation needs of all of the members, all the people that are going to go to this event. We need to make sure we understand that. And finally, just in terms of training on behavioral-based interviewing, what is it that we need to be doing different? So there's little things that can impact your job as well as your programs.
Thank you, Sue. Cindy, any final comments from you? If you were to say, why is it important to get involved with the affinity groups?
Well, like I said, I mean, you know, Sue and I are really, really passionate about this topic. We are not moving forward next year, but only because we feel like it's really time. After 2 years of leading this work, there's some people who have some really great ideas and who are really interested in being involved and who want to be leaders within NACE. And, you know, so we felt like giving others the opportunity to bring their ideas forward was really important as well. And if you're looking for a place to get involved, the Affinity Impact Teams just are a great way to do it. Not unlike this individual, you know, I kind of tried to get involved in NACE for a couple of years and couldn't quite find my footing, and getting to know people, getting to know you guys and other people's members of the board. Wow. I mean, it's just been amazing. You know, how much I've been able to learn and grow professionally, in addition to be able to work on something that I'm really passionate about. So I really encourage people to get involved.
Thank you to our team.
Yes, thank you to our great team.
So thank you, Cindy and Sue, so much for your leadership and your time today. And again, for anyone listening, I can't tell you enough how powerful it is to link with others from other employer groups, from other universities and colleges, and to really contribute to this meaningful work. So we hope you will consider doing so. With that, I'd love to now turn it over to Jen Lassiter, NACE President-elect. Jen, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Meredith. And let's all take a moment and just appreciate everybody that's been on this call today. You have all been amazing. And I so appreciate all your hard work in this last year. I want to take a minute, obviously, and thank all of you, Jeffrey, Cynthia, Charles, Meredith, Ingrid, Cindy, and Sue, and Jeffrey. And I also want to thank Tim and Celdrick from the board, as well as Matthew and Chris for getting all of these affinity groups started. It was a big undertaking, but something that's so very well worth it and has made a real difference to our membership. So thank you all for your leadership. We really appreciate it. I'm very excited to say that the affinity groups are growing. Because of you, our membership, we're adding 4 more in the next year. And you've already seen them on the list, but we want you to know those 4 have been generated from your feedback as NACE members. We didn't just pick them out of the air, but we had individuals who started discussions, and the NACE community started to blow up with certain topics. So we looked to them for affinity groups. So if you want to dip your toe in somewhere, start asking questions in the NACE community. Start joining the affinity groups, start learning from each other. You've already seen the link a few times here that's been shared in the chat box, but we welcome you to join as many affinity groups as you possibly can handle, and then maybe 1 or 2 more, because we can all learn a lot from each other. So I also wanted to share with you the new structure for next year. We still have our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and we still have now these great 17 affinity groups, but we're going to take the leaders of those affinity groups and build an affinity council. This affinity council will be supported by Matthew Brink from NACE, as well as our 2 vice presidents for next year and President-elect Dave Ong. This will give the NACE board even more insight into the needs of our affinity groups and how we can build strategic planning, programs, and support to make sure all of our members are benefiting from their NACE membership. So we're very excited about that. I know I've learned a lot from the affinity groups and can't wait to continue the discussion. And speaking of continuing the discussion, as you've heard, many of our leads are staying in their roles for another year. We want to grow and expand on what's already been started. And I'm so thankful so many people have agreed to stay on for 1 more year. What we hope to do is build an ongoing pipeline so that we always have 1 leader staying and another new leader joining for the affinity groups and for the co-chair roles, so that we can make sure we never stop the great work that's going on. We never want to have to start over. We always want to build on what's already been set as the foundation. And some people may hop off for a year, but they've already given us advice on who's been really active in that affinity group so we can continue that great work. So I think it is vitally important that you all check out the link to join an affinity group and make sure that you are part of the discussion that's going on. As you've heard, you don't have to know a lot about a particular group to join. You're here to learn from each other, benefit from each other's thoughts and experiences, and become an ally for others. And so with that, I want to make sure that you all are aware that everyone belongs here at NACE. Everyone belongs to every affinity group, and we can't wait to see you get involved. Meredith, I think you're going to take some questions from the group next, right?
I am. Jen, thanks so much for your time and your leadership, and we can't wait to continue this work next year along with everyone. So with that, we will open up the Q&A for a few minutes. We've been seeing some great activity in the chat window already. If you haven't had an opportunity to post a question, please feel free to do so. We may not be able to get to all of them today, but we'll do our best to cover a couple that are trending, and we can certainly follow up offline if individuals have more questions. So I think the one that I have seen trending the most thus far is the question on who can join an affinity group and how can someone do so. And I wonder if Matthew Brink, our NACE advisor, might want to join for a minute to answer that one. Matthew, are you able to come off mute to answer that question for the group?
Hello, can you hear me?
You can.
Yes. Yeah. So the way people can get involved is simply by going to the link. You can get involved today. You can get involved absolutely right now by following one of the links that were in the chat. It takes you to the Get Involved page, and it gives you a list of every affinity group that's available. And you just click the box and hit submit, and then you're in. And then our fantastic co-chairs and the co-leads for the groups that you joined will soon reach out to you as this year's activity picks up and kicks off in earnest on July 1. So that would be the best way for folks to get involved.
Thanks, Matthew.
My pleasure.
It really is that simple. So feel free to go out to the link, sign up, and rest assured that someone will be in touch with you, and you can dive in from there. I also saw a question in the chat around what is the time commitment when joining a group. So I'll share a little bit of perspective, but I'd welcome also my co-chairs to join in on this question also. From my point of view, it's as much time as you're able to commit. What I love about the structure within NACE is that oftentimes leading these committees or leading affinity impact teams or task forces or work streams, I feel we have a really good practice within NACE of doing so in a collaborative way with not just one person at the helm, but multiple folks. And from a practical perspective, that comes in really handy because we know that we all have different times at work that are kind of more demanding than others. And I can say firsthand with my co-chairs that whether it was a board report or an agenda we were planning, we took turns. You know, if someone had a week where they said, I'm just, you know, completely maxed out, I can't take this one, you know, one of the other co-chairs would step up and take the lead. And, you know, I think we all did that quite often, and also played to our strengths and leaned in on areas where we said, you know, I like to do this, I think I'm good at this piece. And so, you know, the short answer from me is as much time as you can dedicate, and that can ebb and flow over time depending on what your other work requirements are. But Cynthia and Jeffrey, I'd love to invite you to also share your perspective on that question.
Yeah, Meredith. So, so normally the impact teams normally meet about once a month. So roughly that's about an hour's worth of time. So I think at minimum, you know, looking at, in terms of time, about an hour a month. But then if you choose to, as we heard before, some of the groups did have sub teams, etc. So if you kind of volunteer to go into a role like that, you know, there may be some additional time that may need to be, that will be needed. But on average, I think per week, per month, I mean, I'll say leading this great, or having part of this great team that co-chair the committee, I've probably spent anywhere from, I'll say a good 5 to 7 hours a month, you know, of time when I look at roles, responsibilities, etc. So, but yeah, so I think it's as much as you want to give, and you know, it may be this year you just start off just by being a member, and then you move into additional roles and responsibilities that may require more time.
Cynthia, anything further from you? Okay. So someone asked a question about where can I find the full list of the 17 affinity groups? They were missed at the beginning of the webinar. We will be sharing information after this call. This is recorded, and also materials will be available. So we'll make sure that if anyone has questions about the 17 affinity impact teams going forward, that you certainly can follow up on that information and learn about where you'd like to get involved. What other questions do we have from the group? Feel free to please post into the chat window and we'll see if we can cover some of them.
I did see some people were asking about LinkedIn groups. So for any of the Affinity Impact Team leaders, if they're on the call and if they have any kind of LinkedIn group that's out there, if they can get into the chat box and share that information, that way people, will be able to look and see and join those groups. But again, as Matthew mentioned, making sure that they are members of the actual organization also.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Okay, well, again, we welcome any follow-up offline. Jeffrey, Cynthia, and I are pleased to answer any questions you might have about our committee overall and the affinity impact teams in general. And if there's a more specific question that you might have for an affinity impact team leader, we're able to certainly put you in touch with that person. So with that, I know we have just a few minutes left, and happy to give everyone some time back if there aren't any further questions. So I'll turn it over to Jeffrey to close out the session for today.
Thank you, Meredith. And so I'd like to say on behalf of the co-chairs, on behalf of the Affinity, the impact teams, and as well as, NACE leadership, thank everyone for participating in today's session and workshop. We do hope that you see the work that has been done by our committee, the work that we're committed to do, as well as the work of the organization. We want our members to feel valued, and we hope that you see that through what we're offering as an organization, there is opportunity for you to be valued through the different affinity impact teams. We've been encouraging you to join. We will continue to encourage you to join. And just as Jen said earlier, if you see something that's not represented, get into the NACE community, reach out to people. There's more than enough opportunity out there. So just thank you everyone for participating today. We look forward to, us three look forward to working with this committee again next year and having each one of you be a part. So on behalf of NACE, the co-chairs, I want to say thank you very much and have a good afternoon.